Hello and welcome. This is NC Debrief on News Central. Now, the debrief brings Africa's social stories into focus through analysis, perspectives, and personal experiences every week. We talk about politics, religion, governance, social issues, and much more. With our guests, we dissect the issues at hand. I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. Today, we're looking at surviving gender-based violence. My guests are Lara Kudayisi, known as the Healing Guru. She helps people recover from trauma and abuse. I also have Victor Ogbodo. He is a moderator with Love Matters Naija, a platform which engages young people on sexual and reproductive health and rights issues without judgment and provides a safe space for asking questions and seeking advice. Now, don't forget that you can join the conversation using the hashtag NCDebrief and share your thoughts with us. Gender-based violence refers to harm inflicted on a person or persons in relation to the basic and normative understanding of their gender. There are various forms of gender-based violence, from its most widespread form, which is to acts of violence carried out in online spaces, or even female genital mutilation. These different forms are not mutually exclusive, and multiple incidences of violence can be happening at once and reinforcing each other. When conversations around GBV happen, they tend to tie back to the inequality that exists in society, and that is because in many ways, inequalities related to race, disability, gender, age, social class, religion, sexuality, and more can drive acts of violence. So Lara, let me start with you. The work that you do as the Healing Guru is tied to helping people overcome abuse and trauma. How did you get into something like this, so much so that you sort of have a name, you've made a reputation for yourself?
Okay, it's just based on how my life went. My story in a nutshell is that I had a child at 19, wow. 14 heartbreaks, 15 abortions, got married and got divorced.
Slow down! Repite.
Had a child at 19, had 14 heartbreaks, 15 abortions, got married, got divorced.
Wow.
So you know that I was a walking time bomb.
Wow.
You get.
Yeah.
You know, so I didn't understand that I needed to heal. It was lack of my healing and all the traumas I've gone through, the traumas of my heartbreak, that even caused my divorce, you know, my marriage to break down and stuff like that. You know, so now, having gone through all of that, seeing how people are dysfunctional, seeing how people are they've had traumatic experiences, but they've not healed from it. And they don't even know, and it's affecting their day-to-day, you know, things.
And their intimate relationships.
Exactly. So I decided to create what I call the Healing Boot Camp, where I help people heal, you know, from trauma, you know, abuse and such, you know, all of that. I even have something called Life After Divorce. Okay. You know, for people who have been through divorce, because divorce on its own is a traumatic event.
Especially in societies like ours.
Exactly. You know, so, and people hardly heal from it before going through another marriage. And you find out that they will get remarried, you know, get divorced
and
again.
Keep repeating the cycle.
Yes, because they have not healed. So that's how my journey started.
I'm tempted to ask Victor to comment on what he just heard, because I think the two of us were like,
shocked.
What? But Victor, you run a platform and help moderate a platform that has young people coming in and being able to ask questions. Probably a lot of the questions that at Lara's time, during some of the issues she was facing, nobody was answering. Nobody was even asking. So in terms of some of the work you've been doing with Love Matters Naija, what do you think is the understanding of young people when it comes to intimate relationships, when it comes to consent, when it comes to sexual health rights, when it comes to you hit your girlfriend because you're angry, doesn't necessarily mean she has to stay to prove that she loves you and she understands, but you as the girlfriend don't need to accept it. Like all of the context that goes around some of the things that does lead to gender-based violence.
Actually, based on what the work we do, where we provide a digital space for young persons, which is non-judgmental, which is very safe, and these are also young persons who provide direct advice. Yeah. To other young persons.
So you have like a peer mentoring system?
It's a peer mentoring
fantastic.
system. Yeah. Basically, this system actually creates that enabling environment to actually hold those conversations that are dear to them. And they respond, I mean, one young person to another responding to those issues. I mean, you find sympathy, you find
empathy.
And yeah, and you know, there's a show of love, there's a show of respect. Yeah, because even moderating, actually, you need to actually get them to do exactly what you want.
Yes, true. I get. So there's this
monitor the community, you know, control the community and control the conversation. Yeah. So and based on that, we have a lot of young people who project many of the issues that Lara has actually mentioned. Yeah, and based on those young people actually deal with the issues themselves, and they provide the answers.
Wow. And
relatively, the advices you see on the platform says we are growing into a better nation that shows respect and responsiveness towards people's needs, especially as it concerns sexual reproductive health and rights. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know this was what I was in for in this conversation. Lara, let me come back to you. So you've gone through that process a bit, and for many people, especially women who end up in intimate partner situations where violence is at play, leaving is the most dangerous time. The research backs it up. That is when they need to have some kind of fallback plan. They need to be able to go to a shelter. But in societies such as Lara's and across most of the African continent, we don't have the legal system. We have police stations that will send victims back home and say it's a family affair. This is 2019. That is still happening. Yeah. So what then do we need to do in terms of being able to keep those survivors safe who have decided this is the time I want to leave, this is the time I want to separate myself from this situation? What are the things we need to start doing as a society, and then particularly as the legal and police system, as the justice system as well?
We need to have support system, as in support system that are legalized, foundations, that are empowered and enabled by the government. Because living is a big deal. If somebody has been abused for a very long time, there's something called learned helplessness. The person just learns to be helpless. So for that, it is hard for you to detach yourself from the abuse, from the situation. So for somebody to be bold enough to say, I want to leave, and that's why I created that life after divorce thing, so that you can speak to people who have been through it, who have been through abuse, and they have separated. But it would be nice if there is a legislation or something done by government or police system, where any woman or anybody or even men that are in such situations, when they leave and they come to the station and they report themselves, put them somewhere, refer them to, an organization like this. That would be fantastic.
That also helps them to transition sort of life after the situation.
Because we don't have that at all. Like you said, they will send them back, and then the stigma here, it's crazy, Divorcees are stigmatized. They don't even care. If your husband is beating you, my dear, go and
just
pray.
Stay married.
Stay there, go and pray. They don't care if you die there. They will come for the burial and say, oh my God, such a good wife. Yeah, that's how we are in Africa. But it is important that we have support systems, because that's what they need. They need somebody to tell them it's going to be okay. I've been through this before. I've survived it. It's going to be okay. The last program we had for the Life After Divorce, I brought somebody who was abused for 16 years straight, and this is 15 years after. She's older now. Yeah. She's still suffering the consequences, physically.
Like sort of PTSD.
She passes out. When she's talking, even during that program, she was like, in case I pass out, it's fine, it's okay. Wow. Yes, because her head has been hit on the wall, so many times, beaten, slapped, dragged on the floor, so, she said her skull somewhere is broken, according to the doctor. So she's going through, this is 15 years after, she's still going through therapy. She's still going through physical rehabilitation. That's how deep that issue is. But when people have somebody who says, I've done it, I'm here today, I'm doing fine, it's easier for them to leave. But if you don't have support system, who will help you? Your parents will abuse you, your colleagues in the office will make mockery of you, even though they are dying in their own marriages.
Facing the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that's just, we just need to have this conversation more so that government can do something, maybe provide shelter.
So there's a part that Lara mentioned. When we talk about gender-based violence, we do tend to focus on women because the statistics are there. Women are the victims mostly of gender-based violence. But yes, we cannot leave out the guys. And I want to ask, based on the moderation that's happening on Love Matters Naija, are you seeing young men who are able to come out and talk about possibly being in situations of violence in their intimate relationships?
Well, speaking about statistics, the statistics are not much. They're just pockets of statistics existing. And that's for the women. But if you want to talk about men who...
It's almost non-existent.
It's non-existent, actually. Not even the framework to provide those services, those support systems, those support services to men. So the only kind of support systems you see are provided by non-governmental organizations. Yeah, so a whole lot of NGOs actually do a whole lot of work.
With limited capacity.
With limited capacity. And we are going to be rolling out next year, we're going to be rolling out what we call Service Matters. Just like we have Love Matters, which provides a digital platform. But for Service Matters, it's going to be non-discriminatory. It's going to be targeted to all gender, sexual orientation, identity, and giving that space, that opportunity for young persons to actually put out their stories, to deal with the issues and provide psychosocial support that is needed. to handle most of those issues around abuses and violence.
Okay, so let's talk a bit more about the statistics and sort of the aftermath. You have situations where survivors of GBV can suffer significant health consequences, and the example you gave, Lara, is one of the extreme ones I have seen. Beyond death, what we do know that people can die in these situations, and it can be unwanted pregnancies, HIV and other sexually transmitted infections, physical trauma as well, and even death. In South Africa, statistics essay tells us that femicide is 5 times higher than the global average. And even if there isn't a survivor in a femicide, there are families and a trail of wounded people. So how do we sort of cater to the people at this? And I'm going to ask a controversial question later on, but I'll keep that question for now. But how do we cater to survivors in a way that allows them to move past the trauma and then be able to sort of re-engage themselves with society?
Firstly, they need to go through therapy. You know, we don't emphasize that here in Africa. You know, we don't embrace that. We think therapy is for mad people or crazy people, you know, but it's beyond that. We need to engage people in therapy. And that's why I'm glad now there are lots of, you know, organizations like this, you know, and pockets, you know, there. I also volunteer for one organization that is free, provide free therapy services, because some people cannot afford.
They can afford,
you know, to pay. So if you just Google, you will find them, you know. So we need to engage them in therapy because something has happened. Something has happened to their psyche. Something has been done. It's like, you know, it's a trauma that you've gone through. You never remain the same.
Sure.
You know, so for you to be reabsorbed or re-engaged with society, you have to be coupled back. We have to look for the problem. This was what they damaged. You know, this was the wire that, you know, got burnt or cut or something. So we need to fix it back. Or else they will create more damage because they're going to have more intimate relationships. That dysfunctionality is going to affect other relationships and destroy other relationships. You know, so let's get them into therapy. And I'm not saying these days when people come from therapy, they just want to have one session and go away. I'm talking about somebody who has left a marriage 15 years after. She's still having therapy. Abroad, people have therapy forever. It's something that they do, you know, at their leisure. But here, you know, it's just like, no, let me just talk once, or our pastor is our therapist. No. There are professionals licensed, you know, to do that. And I'm one of them. And I'm sure that's why we're even having this conversation.
That's it. All right, so Lara, let's take a pause. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. And we're talking about surviving gender-based violence. We'll be right back. This is still NC Debrief.
We're a medium of trust in a world of speculation and opinion.
Developing a narrative of Africa that is true, compelling, and relatable.
We're challenging misrepresentations, stereotypes, and false perceptions.
Disrupting the African conversation and driving the agenda for inclusive and objective reporting in politics, business, culture, entertainment, and sports.
We are amplifiers of previously untold stories, giving equal prominence to reports across Africa.
We are tickers of today's events, with reliable, timely, and responsible coverage of evolving issues.
We are charting the narratives that define Africa to the world.
Welcome back to NC Debrief on News Central. I still have Lara and Victor with me as we discuss surviving gender-based violence. So I want to go ahead and get to my controversial question. Maybe I'm the one calling it controversial. It may not so much be. But there have been those who say that we should actually also look at the abusers, offering them some form of sympathy, therapy, that is not just simply about them going to jail, that we can work to reform them. Now, the worst is that some of this abuse can go from relationship to relationship, and then eventually the person kills somebody. Yes. And they're never fully stopped in between, and someone sits them down, works to rehabilitate them. Do you think we can rehabilitate abusers? Is there motivation for sort of getting to the abuser before he or she becomes an abuser? And how can that be done? Lara, let me start with you.
Well, most abusers are abused victims, you know, when they were young. Some people grew up in a society or a family where the father is abusing the mother or the mother is abusing the father, and subconsciously, you know, it's a learned behavior.
And then it becomes a family cycle.
Then it becomes a family cycle. So until, you know, there's no way you can even help only the, what we call them now, the abused victims, without even helping the abusers. Because if both of them have children, the abuser, the abused victim, there is a tendency that that child that they have together will also become an abuser
or a victim of an abuser.
Victim of abuse. So that is why both people need to go through therapy. I want to tell you something. People who have abused their spouse or people generally, it's not what they want to do. Do you understand? I'm telling you, it's controversial to you, but it's the truth. If you look at it, it's not normal. It's an abnormal situation. It's an anomaly. Somebody you profess to love, somebody you begged, somebody you prostrated to marry, and then you start battering the person. There's something happening that they cannot control. It's a dysfunction, most especially from childhood. But people don't,
that part of the conversation we don't want to talk about a lot of times. Victor, what do you think? And then especially what she's added in terms of it's not something necessarily that the individual can control. What do you think about that?
Well, speaking about abusers in this instance, the first thing I had to tell you is that most times when you talk about abusers, the kind of society we run is a self-coping mechanism for individuals who have been abused or abusers. So it's either they are coping on their own. Most times they are coping on their own. Not many people get help. They help, the desired help they need. So basically that dysfunctionality actually continues and is replicated with
other relationships
and equally the outcomes of that kind of abuse. So but notwithstanding, we've seen many abusers very few abusers get reprimanded for their actions. And that's also a problem. But the prison structures are actually lacking in terms of rehabilitation for those kinds of abusers. Most institutions actually do not take psychosocial support very importantly. And they can't even, it should be a policy actually that actually is embedded in labor policy, in our labor policies, such as them provide psychosocial support to individuals, especially when they need it. If companies can donate or set aside 5 to 10% of their earnings to providing psychosocial support to their employees, it will go a long way
into solving some of these. And then we'd even be able to catch some of these issues a bit earlier before they become
There are some multinationals that actually have things like that.
Those structures in place.
They take care of their staff, whether you are the abused victim or the abuser. I know some organizations that they take care of them, take them to therapy, not shaming them, not jailing them, not arresting them, not making it public, but they do take care of them.
Okay, so let's also talk about what happens with intimate partner abuse. Now, according to the WHO, 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced either physical and or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. And there are many people who do believe that these statistics are actually underreported, that that's not the true number. What's the best way we can see to get people out of these situations?
The abuse situation?
Yes.
Well, we've talked
because you have to get out before you can survive.
Yes, get out is sometimes some people don't even have the financial capacity to get out. So let's do funding for them. There are times in my own initiative I raise funds for women who are being battered, abused, and they cannot, afford, maybe another house or take their kids with them. They can't, put their kids in school. Let's raise funds for them. Let's have.
So money is a major issue.
Money is very important. Financial empowerment. That's why a lot of people are still there. Today they have issues, they cannot live because they are not empowered financially. They can't take care of 4 kids. They can't even rent a house in Lagos where you have to pay a lump sum of 1 year. Some people are not even earning that much. The man has the higher power, and that's where female empowerment too comes in, So if you're married or in a relationship as a woman, you have to have your own money because money gives you confidence.
And it gives you power.
And it gives you power, exactly. So funding is very important. Let's have a fund, and scattered all across Africa, so that if they have issues, there's a place they can go to and they will access funding so that we can get them out of that situation.
Okay. Victor, do you agree with her? How important is funding and then what can we do?
Funding is important, but to a large extent, but not. I've seen rich women actually be who are victims of violence and who are victims who have been abused. So it's more of, it has to do more of the kinds of internal structures we create as a country and maybe Africa wide, So those kind of structures will actually, structures that are responsive, structures that are that that hold people accountable for their actions. Those kinds of things needs to be put in place. The moment we have institutions that are responsive, like you walk into a police station, they're responsive.
And they're not sending you back home.
Say it's a family matter.
So that can actually transmogrify the entire situation, change it from this into a better situation. Even abusers get attention, the
rehabilitation therapy.
are also rehabilitated. So those kinds of therapy are a necessity.
Okay, this is just the beginning of conversations like this. It's never enough to constantly try to educate and, of course, help the public to understand. And with the work that Lara and Victor are doing, we very much applaud you. Lara, you're using your own personal journey to sort of impart knowledge on other people and helping them to survive. And Victor, opening up a platform. One of the things we know that African youth lack is really safe places to really ask the questions our parents, many of our parents are not ready nor willing to answer. So I have to say a very big thank you to the both of you for joining us today. It has been NC Debrief, and as usual, the time is never enough, but we hope that we've started a conversation and we've encouraged you to be ready to look forward and further into gender-based violence. So a very big thank you again to Lara and Victor for joining me on NC Debrief today, and thank you for watching. Now please keep the contributions coming in using our hashtag NC Debrief. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at News Central TV. Our website is www.newscentral.africa, and until next time, I'm Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun. I'll leave you with the powerful words of this poem.
Dear woman, you are enough. With all your bags of skin and all the bones that live in there, you are enough. With all the black of your language and the direction of your accent, with all the memories and the dreams that live inside and all the melodies that dance in your blood, you are enough. Come in all your shapes, shades, and sizes. Come, dance and relish in the flavor and glory of your being. Come, you are enough. Come, feel the weight of your being. You are enough. So welcome to yourself.